Deputy Mayor Gutierrez this evening.
He wants to, yes.
If council is agreeable.
All right, we'll call to order then. See no delegations for public hearing. We'll start with reports from administration, CAO report.
We have nothing, I have nothing to report at this time. Our regular activity and ongoing project reports will be filed with council. If there's something of a particular nature that I need to bring to council's attention, or your new CAO, then that's where that would fit in committee at all. There's nothing at this point to report.
Well, we'll move on to review.
Dean, sorry, Matt, there's nothing about interviews that you had, or? That's
Yeah, we're
okay,
going to talk
on camera.
about it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Performance review policy.
Yes, what we have before council tonight is an employee performance review policy. And as council's aware, your current personnel policy is under revision. And in the present form, your personnel policy is a consolidation of a number of policies: purchasing, employee code of conduct, media, use of town equipment, as well as performance review and other things related to personnel. And it's very confusing. So what we've done, first of all, is move it out of that context. First of all, the big difference in this policy versus what you had is a couple things. The former system, every employee had a different anniversary date, and performance reviews were, so whenever you were hired was your anniversary date. That's when performance reviews were conducted. And over the course of 27 employees, it became very confusing as to who should, when, not just when it should happen, but it really impacted the pay increments that went with the salary grid that is being changed effective January the 1st. So what this policy proposes is that every employee will be evaluated prior to January 15th of every year, so everybody has the same anniversary date. Your current threshold now, in order for an employee to move into the next step in their salary grid, which in your new grid system is adjusted to the cost of inflation and will move as each year moves. In order to move to the next step, all you needed to do was perform at a 40% level. So that meant after you went through, and we've attached the policy to the back of this report, after going through that, if your cumulative score was over 40%, you would be bumped to the next step. And we're suggesting that 40% threshold is way too low, because that means you could be a not productive employee 60% of the time and still get a raise, and that's the way your system is set up right now. So what this does is we're suggesting, and this is what council does have some discretion, we're suggesting in order to move to the next step of the employee's grid that an overall threshold of 75% be achieved, and that's an increase from 40. So as an example, if you didn't score 75%, then you would not move to the next step in your grid because your performance didn't meet the minimum requirements as identified in your job description. So we've gone through the process of reviewing job descriptions, and the way that this is set up is that each employee, the basis of this is that you need to meet the primary duties of your job. And if you're doing that, then that's got a ranking to determine whether you move in, and then the balance of whether you move to the next threshold is based on whether you've achieved those things that you didn't do from your previous year, so they're performance based. And then the second part is to determine things like attitude and subjective related matters that the department head or the evaluator would do. So it's if you don't meet the primary duties of your job, this policy, and we're suggesting that the employee likely shouldn't be rewarded by moving to the next step because they haven't done what we've agreed to do in the job description. The salary range that you've seen and approved is such that it versus your previous salary range will be adjusted annually. So whatever CPI or inflation is, then that grid would move. So the grid moves on inflation, right? So if the employee gets a positive performance review, then the and gets over the threshold, then they would recommend that the employee goes to the next step, and then we make those adjustments. The other difference in this policy as well is that the end result of not the details, but who moved up in the grid would be reported back to council in this policy by the CEO. Right now, council really doesn't know who got a raise and who didn't, the way your current policy is set up. So those are the major adjustments that are in there, and we're recommending approval of this for implementation January 1st, 2021, and further that sections 1.3 to 1.6 in your current personnel policy, including Form B, be rescinded. Because this is a new system, we'd even further suggest that it be reviewed after 1 full year of operation as well to determine by your new CAO to determine its effectiveness, as well. So I'll stop there, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I got a couple things as I read through it that, so when you're saying 75% or higher would be eligible to move up, I would like to see that raised to 80. Since I've been going to school, 80 is an A, 75 is a B. And I think we should set the bar high instead of setting it lower. So I'd like to see 80. Employees that are top of the grid, it just says they automatically, so for employees that are already at the top of the grid, over the top step of the salary grid to achieve a performance review rating of 75, they would be eligible for up to 3 days of leave at the discretion of the CAO and direct supervisor. So they have to go through a performance review before they receive that 3 days?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, they'd have to meet whatever special council sets, and then it could be up to 3 days. Because it's not really, because they've hit the top of the range, it doesn't affect salary, but it is a reward to those employees that have hit the top of the range.
Yeah, no, that's good. As long as they have to go through a positive review, that's good.
They would, yeah, absolutely. Every employee has to go through this, whether they're at the top of the grid or not.
So on bullet 5 of page 2, that's the CPI index. So that says at the discretion of council's approval, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But on page 6, changes in salary, it doesn't really say upon council's approval on those ones. So if we could add that in.
It's which one, just to be clear, it's like in the budget process, you would determine whether you're going to use, like whatever standard you want, whether you want to use the Saskatchewan Consumer Price Index or inflation, from the previous year, like you'll have a choice on which derivative you want to use in order to do that, because they're different. And, like right now, it's almost a negative number, so there's not a lot of movement this year. So when your budget's presented to you, you'd make that decision, and that's how the grid would be adjusted by the CAO. The whole grid would be adjusted based by what council directs the CAO to do for the ensuing year. So you control the amount of increases in the grid, where you haven't done that since we've been there. We don't see evidence that you have. It has been what it has been for the last 3 years.
Okay. As long as it's at the discretion. Now on page 7.
Yeah.
So there's no performance rating, like as I look at this matrix of what we're gonna assess people on, there's no performance rating dealing with public. Like there's a public relations, but is that what we consider dealing with public? Like,
So that's right, yeah, yeah. So we, like, that's just an example of how the matrix look. So the improvement, whatever improvement the previous, did you do it, yes or no? No, and if they did, then they get a ranking of that, and then opinion on the subjective side of how that employee's done. So, I mean, these can be changed, I guess, from year to year, and that's why we're suggesting after one full year, see how it plays out and, how it works. We've seen, and we've used these before, and they do seem to cover off all the dots. If you kind of go to the forums, it follows the forums as well, in general terms.
Yeah, no, I read through the forums and how you guys are gonna fill them all out and stuff like that, but it seems like a lot of the issues that we have is dealing with public, so why would we be not rating them on if you have any things coming through their surveys or anything like that?
Yeah, and it's one field, out of 10. So it's really important.
Yeah.
Dean, the only question that I would have in regards to the performance review, is there a reason why it's a straight up pass-fail and not a point system of, on a scale from 1 to 5 in each one of those categories? Because I mean, each person can reasonably make a mistake in 1 year, but does that mean that it's an automatic pass-fail, or what's the balance of probability on where you would say it's a yes or a no? Is it receives 3 negative feedback, receives 5 negative feedback,
Yeah. Well, I think that the premise of this is that the expectation of the employer, which is council, is that everybody should come to work and fulfill their primary duties. So you get paid X amount, and we expect you do that. If you're not performing the primary duties, then to a reasonable expectation, then we're kind of done, because you've kind of broken our deal. You're not really doing what we expect you to do. If you get through that and you are meeting your primary duties, then this type of a process, I find, versus the number rating system, like your current system is a 1 to 10, and mathematically people will usually come down the middle. And we looked at how employees were ranked on scores over the past number of years, and there wasn't. It pretty much came out that way. In some we each in some cases we did a separate. We got like staff were submitted, managers submitted their own employees' performance reviews, and then we kind of did reversed it and did it on them, and we come up with different rankings. So it's really the former system was really too subjective. This adds a bit more structure and provides for rewarding those employees that are performing at a better than primary level. So the expectation is, if you and I are side by side and I'm not meeting my primary duties and you are, then what do you think you need to do, in order to get an increase? And is it fair? The employer's got the right to decide what's fair or not, or what their expectations are, and that's why the threshold, like Dallas has suggested 80%, we said 75. It can be whatever council chooses it to be, whatever threshold you want, and that's something we need to sort out, in the policy moving forward. But that's the reason for it. The former system was just way too subjective, and the fact is you only had to score 40% to move into your grid, which the steps in some cases were higher than inflation.
Question?
Yeah.
When you're talking about the measurement in relation to the threshold through the primary duties, is there some assurance that somebody isn't going to pack that employee's duties with non-primary extra crap, that they are doing so much that they can't fulfill their primary duties? And if that is the case, how do we correct that and make sure that it doesn't happen to everybody?
Well, this is a self-correcting process, because part of the review is that the evaluator sits down with the employee and actually goes through that job description. And we've already done that. We've gone through the job descriptions, and we had some, there's been some shifts made, and that's when the managers or the directors sit down with their staff, they'll also bring in the job description. Like, are you actually doing this, yes or no? Because we found that a lot of cases, some primary duties change, right?
Yes.
Things have been added or deleted, and this will recognize that. So if there's agreement that, you know what, you're not really doing that, it's not a punitive element, it's agreed that you're not doing it, we'll take it out. So, but there's also an opportunity to add and make them real life. So that's why after 1 year, you need to review it with the employees. And that's been one of the issues with the town job descriptions, is that they're very dated and they're not reviewed on an annual basis. This forces that to happen.
I think I like the idea of doing reviews once a year instead of sporadically, depending on when that employee started, Dean. But if there's an employee, say, starting in November or December, I don't imagine you're gonna do a review on that employee after only being there for a month or two. Is there a threshold that we would set for an employee start date before they would be reviewed?
Well, they'd be a probationary employee, and I guess I think the policy kind of speaks to that, depending on when you're hired and your probation, and everything's tied to January 1st. So, there'd be some judgment on that, whether you'd be eligible or not. If you're a probationary employee, right now it's a 6-month probationary period, so it really depends on the circumstance, and we might have to sort that out, in all honesty. Excuse me.
Okay, so on to the point that Dallas brought up about changing the threshold to 80%. How does everyone feel about that?
Do I think.
I
Seriously.
like it.
Set the bar high. We set it too low, then.
Oh, I know, I agree that 40% was too low, but I'm just saying 70%
Is there
probably.
a reason that you picked 75, Dean? Or was that just a spitball number?
It was, I think, no, there wasn't a lot of magic other than if, you're fulfilling, if you hit 75, which is 3/4, felt that just was a reasonable approach. There was no magic to it, truthfully.
5 points more is not a whole lot, and if you're due for a raise, I suppose you should be performing. Even at 80%, it's 20% of not performing, so.
That's right.
You should be exceeding values for a raise, in my opinion. But Rex, what do you think?
Council has the final say.
Not on that.
Huh?
Not on that, their supervisor has to say whether or not they're gonna give the raise. We have to set what the standard is.
So who evaluates?
Their direct supervisor. So the manager of the department, so if it's a public works and rink attendant.
The reason I say that is because if the manager of that department has a grievance or doesn't agree with the person, they may get a lesser evaluation than somebody they like.
Don't disagree with you there, but then we have more issues than this policy, right?
Yeah.
As long as it's done fairly, I can see it. It has to be done fairly.
Yeah.
And council, as far as the managers go, on their evaluation, council still has the final say, eh? Or is it the CAO that does it all?
We only evaluate the CAO.
But
CAO,
if they're dissatisfied with the qualification, does the council have any put it into this thing, or we just sit here like robots?
no, right on the bottom, I believe, an employee may appeal the performance evaluation in writing to the CAO, who shall meet with the employee and evaluator and render a decision within 5 working days of the receipt of the appeal. In the case the CAO being dissatisfied with the evaluation decision is council, and the appeal is final there's no appeal once you go to council.
Alrighty.
So there is an avenue there.
Yeah.
As long as it won't come down to one person, that's all I'm getting at.
Can I ask you, Dean, this is kind of a generic one, I assume, and that you probably picked and choose from a few places. And if that's true, where has it been used before? And if it has been used before, what is the threat of the staff to just deciding enough of this BS, we're gonna unionize? That's what I'm really asking. Is there a danger here?
I don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah.
We didn't pick and choose, like, we developed it based on our own experience. We didn't cherry pick it from anywhere, so I'm not aware of who's exactly doing this myself personally. We're a believer, like our company is a believer in performance pay and recognizing good performance and not recognizing subpar. So, the other question is, I don't have a response to that.
Yeah, like I'm not trying in any way trying to accuse you of stealing this from somebody else, or, you know what I mean? It's a question of, this is well thought out, but is it that too strong that we are in danger of having a union put on us? You know what I mean? Or is it okay? That's kind of all I'm asking.
Back to the specific point of 75 or 80, where do we sit on that one? You?
Yeah, I'd be fine, 75, 80, you're just expecting more out of your employees. Yeah.
I would say 75 good enough.
Glenn, you're saying 80. Dallas is 80, Jordan?
We call it fun.
I say leave it at 75.
Okay. So is the intent here of council to recommend the recommendation be brought forward to the next council meeting as presented?
I think so, yes. Unless
Okay.
there's anything else that someone has noticed in there they want to discuss.
Yeah.
Is there any avenue for a senior employee, somebody who's in an upper position, who has been here for years, to appeal a dismissal? Not anything else, but a dismissal to council or to another body other than just the CEO?
Well, the way your administrative bylaw is set, first of all, the CEO doesn't have the authority to dismiss, council does. So the CEO can only make a recommendation to dismiss, and, obviously that's going to be done with thought and legal counsel and brought, to council for decision. So that's how that works.
Thank you.
Is everyone in favor of recommending to approve this at our next council meeting then?
We don't vote on it here, but yeah.
No.
It's where we discuss it, so if you don't like it, speak up now. Is there anything you don't like about it, Glenn?
No.
So you're okay with recommending to approve it at our next council meeting?
Is that the formal route of doing this, or?
Yeah, we just, if council's in agreement with what the chair is saying, then we record it that way, and then we would draw the recommendation, and at your next meeting, you'll be approving recommendations, because you've already discussed them through, and there is debate if there's a new piece of information that came up or you had a question, and it's moved and seconded, but otherwise, this is the discussion part of reports, is the intent of committee of the whole.
And streamline council meetings.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're
I'm
done.
satisfied with it, except for the, council has a final say, that's all I'm saying. Who's running the show? Yeah, it's supposed to be us, is it not?
Yeah, but I think we also approve the policy, and then it goes that way, and if we don't like that, then we change the policy.
Correct.
Have you at all showed this or talked to any of the staff about it, or are we just bringing this on them too?
No, we didn't discuss it with staff. This is an employer-related matter. It's not really negotiable.
There's no documents leaked?
Not for me, no.
Maybe before we pass this, we should have some discussion with staff. See what they think.
Possibly.
You just said who's running the show.
Huh?
Who's running the show, you just said.
Yeah? But the staff staff should have some input, should they not?
I think it's pretty fair when you look at it. Okay.
I agree with you, Rich, to a certain level, but at some point, who's the boss and who's the employer? I think the boss has to make that call. Okay, moving along, bylaw 63720, fire services bylaw.
So, this is a total revamp of your former bylaw, that's in place, and we've had it vetted through our legal counsel. When we did review it the first time, the fire chief and I, there was a lot of exposure to the town in the way the bylaw was written, and there's been quite a few changes in totality, and what I'd like to do maybe is just get the fire chief to review the summary of the major changes that we're proposing in the bylaw, and open it up to council for questions. Keith, do you want to go through that?
How you doing, Keith?
Good, how are you?
So this thing hasn't been revised in 24 years?
That's correct, yeah.
Real current.
Due for an update. Forgive me, sorry, I'm just bringing this down.
Take your time.
Want a copy of it?
Iterate.
Yeah, here's,
Is that the CBC, Keith?
I got it here. So, basically, yeah, like what Dean had said, it's pretty much a revamp. So, probably one of the big ones, and I know this was a major talking point during the last fire board meeting, was fees for attending false alarms. They make up, a good chunk of our call volume, so basically, so after 2 freebies, I guess you could say, per calendar year, for attending a false alarm, we'll start charging a fee. And that's in line with what most municipalities and cities actually do, is they charge around $250 to $300. It doesn't cover everything, but it's,
So a freebie, or you can, like, since, let's say, apartment block, you only pays one tax, is that apartment block allowed to, or is that certain apartment only allowed to?
it would go to the apartment owner.
Yeah, so one apartment block is only,
Correct.
okay.
You go to the same place like more than 3 times?
Multiple times. Apartments are a big one.
Stove fires, they leave stuff cooking on the stove.
I know, but that's, if there's a fire, you're gonna go.
But quite often, it's a false alarm, like there was a little bit of smoke and the smoke detector went off and it automatically notifies the fire department. I think that's the situation you're talking about.
it's a roundabout question. I can understand in La Ronge, but suppose you attended, this is a town bylaw, right?
Correct.
So what happens if you attend a fire in Air Ronge or on reserve and
So,
you charge this person with a penalty? How are you gonna collect and by what authority if it's a town bylaw only?
correct, yeah. So this is going to be only a town or on bylaw. So after this is approved through council, my plan is to go to Air Ronge Council and get them to adopt this bylaw as well, same with the ban. So just kind of one at a time. I know with Air Ronge, they've adopted our current bylaw, so I have a reason to believe that they won't do it for this one as well. Another thing for the fees, so we don't want to scare our residents by making it, okay, you got a false alarm, after this we're going to start charging you, because people are going to start unplugging their smoke detectors. So from a life safety perspective, that's why we chose to. And then after their second one, we will also let them know that, hey, you're on your second one, try to be careful.
But these are the people who put the money in the budget. doesn't that seem, you know, it's all tax, like, you're spending their money, and now you're charging them more to, like, there's that side of it that is, I get the false alarm, and it's, if you're called to a wrong place, and there's a problem here, I get that, but it's not like you're relieving our area, and it's a false alarm, like, it's taxpayer dollars.
Exactly, the taxpayers aren't all responsible for attending false alarms, because they're calling out the entire crew and sending the fleet to.
I don't have
vehicles and stuff, but
how many calls and where they are in front of us, like it's, you know, if you looked at the facts, but it would, I mean, if it's needed, it's needed, I get that, but it's just like,
it
we
was
have
a
to be
problem.
careful that
That's why it was
it's
addressed.
still there, like they're paying.
And some of this, council, is that you know, in my experience, this also, there's an education element that would go into this. So once it's implemented, then, you know, part of what the fire chief would do would, you know, we make sure that you know, we communicate, you know, this type of thing out there so that people are conscious of it, because it, you know, it is a waste of time, and it's a waste of resources to get false alarms when the fire department is required to respond on an as required basis. So it should be punitive to those that take advantage of it, that do lay a false. But the intent is, you know, we can't draw a partial line in the sand. So you know, there is kind of like a warning, as was suggested, and then, you know, the full it kicks in after that. So some of it is businesses and residents have to be wary of that as well.
I got a question, because it's happened to our residents. Do you keep statistical information whereby it's an electronic issue, Keaton, versus an actual 911 call? You know, with all this electronic home alarm systems, do you keep that data? Do you feel that there's an increase because of the alarms that are in houses today versus 911?
Not that specific. We do keep track of which companies are the most problematic, I guess you could say, for our homes. We break it down into, so if it's a cooking fire, you burnt your toast, you got smoke, and now we say that that's not false alarm. We actually move that to a cooking incident, which is a different stat. So false alarm would be your steam set off the shower, or you're changing the batteries, nuisance alarms, people pulling them. That's kind of how we break it down.
Yeah, so you've got guidelines that define false alarm, yeah, like you were just saying, like.
Yeah, no,
So
that's a
some
good
of it may
answer.
not be
Good one.
electronic, and some of it may not be a false alarm.
So if somebody walking through a building at the school, for instance, pulls a fire alarm, is that considered a fire alarm? A
That's
false alarm?
False, yeah.
And if it happens 3 times, the school gets charged?
Correct, yeah.
And I think some businesses have something in place to find that individual for pulling that. I know they do for hotels, so you're compensating in a sense. You gotta put some type of deterrent in there, and that's what you're trying to do.
Right. Do you know the actual cost or an average cost, I guess, keeping of a false alarm call, so that
Roughly around $300, and that's just firefighter wages. So I think we've set it to $250 or $300 is the fee, but pretty much just covers it, yeah.
it's enough of an incentive for people to be careful with it, I suppose, so, and you get 2 chances, I think it's pretty fair. What do you have up next, sir?
Extraordinary cost recoveries, so this would be like if we attend your, you know, say house fire or whatever, we need a dozer, or we lit a bush fire and we need a dozer or something like that. Any kind of equipment that's outside of our fleet that we require, it doesn't, the price of the cost doesn't fall back on the fire department. So this is just making.
Do you bill their insurance company?
No, I don't have an answer to that, I'll have to get back to you.
Yeah. And the reason why I ask is a long, long time ago, when we were in Alberta, we used to do that, the fire department, bill their private insurance company.
Something like that probably should be written in.
Yeah.
Up next is updated fire inspections. Section is just the former bylaw was just kind of lacking in that. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
And what was changed in that section?
Basically, authority to inspect, so it just kind of outlines the fire inspector's authority and what type of businesses need a fire inspection done, type of businesses that need fire drills. This is all kind of ripped out of the National Fire Code, and it's just kind of, what we did is we picked the most important ones. Just kind of what I did here.
So it has come from a national organization, not just something that we've driven out.
Yeah, right.
Well, and we've adopted the National Fire Code, so we would have been doing it, this is just for greater certainty in our bylaw.
Perfect.
So next, outline fire pit requirements. Most municipalities have a section in the bylaw saying that you can only be so far away from the house or your property line, but it has to be made out of that kind of sort of thing, so. That's in there now. Up next is wood and lumber storage requirements. So, again, this basically, let's say a business is storing wood, it has to be so far off the ground. Can't be close to like a building, that kind of thing.
Is there different requirements for different areas of town, like residential areas or industrial or a lumber yard, for example?
Right. That I'll have to look into, I'm not sure of that.
I think there probably should be some variance with that.
And that it's most likely listed in the National Fire Code, and I can definitely look into that as well.
Okay.
Fire ban notification, so this just outlines, I guess, my authority to issue a fire ban. And this is just straight from the Fire Safety Act, through the province. So basically, the decision comes down to the fire chief.
So do you do any consultation with anybody before you pull the trigger on that? Like, who are you consulting? before you-
With the environment,
Sask Environment, just
Yeah.
kind of, yeah.
wildfire management, yeah.
Okay.
Hydrant clearance requirements, so it just kind of outlines, you know, you can't put anything next to the hydrant, like a fence, or, if you have a private hydrant, you need to keep clear, or keep snow clear from it.
One of the things that worked well this past year is that there was good communication between the fire chief and the manager of public works and utilities on keeping fire hydrants open. So if Keaton or staff were driving around and noticed that, you know, something was plugged, then that would go on the priority list, and we'd make sure that those were cleared out immediately, because sometimes that happens from time to time. So I believe they're marked and identified now and are part of the list. Is that correct, Keaton?
No, they're not marked at all.
Well, internally though, we know where they all are.
Oh, yeah, for sure, we know where it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought one year I seen like the one, it's by your property in the back there. They clean the snow in front of it, and then they put it back. Why would that be?
Who's the rate?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Like I seen you guys clean the snow in front, then you put it back on there.
Yep, so, that happened, I think, I don't know, it was
This
a couple
last year,
years
the year
ago.
before, yeah.
And they, whoever decided to put it back to like insulate the ground to prevent it from freezing or something like that. That was the explanation I got anyway, so.
Drove around down the road to push the frost out and put the snow back on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was,
I seen that, I'm like, what the hell are they doing?
Keaton was actually like a transportation employee at the time, and he removed the snow being part of the fire
Oh,
department,
okay.
and then he was told to put it back.
It was hard.
Yeah,
No, I was just like, oh, okay, they're clearing the fire hydrants out, and all of a sudden they're putting it back. I'm like, oh. Guess I could ask you then.
Yeah, had to swallow a big pill.
Property identification.
Yeah, so this is just, basically outlining every property needs to have, an actual, you know, property number located on their building. I think that's a no-brainer, but it's not really defined in the current bylaw, so. I know there's some businesses in town that don't have numbers at all on their base front of the building, so.
It is somewhat important, not just for fire services, but for other emergency services
Correct.
attending
Yeah.
some.
Rob, go ahead, Rob.
Falls under the building numbering bylaw. Buildings are required to have one numbered 3.5 inches, I think it's specified in that bylaw. It's going to have the areas too.
Yeah, so this will be mostly for, I guess, I believe I referenced it in there, but mostly like for fire inspectors.
Could I ask that we do that with our first billing of water in the year? Does some get only an annual bill, so if we could put a notice in there that you need to have numberage on your building, like I know we need to put one on ours out in the industrial for sure. Because when they're delivering parcels, nobody has a number on out there.
Just to touch on that, Dallas, some people are on annual, but they kind of select which month, so it's not just always issued in January. Some might choose
We'll
August.
figure, we can figure that out. We'll
Yeah.
talk about it and see if there's a
Yeah.
way to get it out to people. That's a good suggestion. We'll just figure out the best way to do it, Dallas.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Securing premise and vacant buildings.
Yeah, so this is another one that's basically pulled from the National Fire Code. We've had problems with some properties after a fire. It's the owner's responsibility to make sure that building is secure, so there's no entry. Or if there's a vacant building, it has to be worked up so there's no threat of someone going in and lighting on fire, that kind of thing. Basically, it's just making sure that the owner of the property does their part to make sure it's safe.
Persons present at emergency scenes, and this has been an issue previously with our,
No fighting?
amongst members or public.
So this is pretty much a no-brainer. Like it states, a person shall obstruct or hinder the emergency vehicles. The person should drive over a fire hose, cross fire line, do not cross. The barrier tape. And just lets, it just gives out guidelines saying that if you're causing an issue on a scene, our CMP officers would take you away.
And some of this we got from our legal counsel because our other, our old bylaw was weekend. We wanted to make sure that whatever we had in the bylaw, we had the ability to enforce, as well, and that's where we had it vetted. And the fee schedule's at the back.
And is there much drastic change in that, or?
They were increased, I believe it was $1,000 prior. But we've added several things in here, like our rescue units, compressor and cascade use. I know SAS Water likes to come and use our compressor at the hall. And I think it's only fair if they can use that. They should kind of pay. That's exempt from, the band won't have to do that because I know Sucker River comes down and they fill up theirs. But the band already puts money into the fire department, so I don't think it makes sense for them to build themselves.
Maybe depending if they're using equipment out of an emergency situation, it's not our duty as the town
imagine that Sucker River would get its own budget for fire over there.
I think so.
No? You're all for it?
Yeah, our split is with,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was. But realistically, what's it costing for them to fill their air tanks, and that's for a safety concern, whereas Southwolders not using it for that type of thing, I would think, right?
Right.
Sucker.
Well, they wouldn't specifically, but their own job would be.
Yeah.
Or is, or
Yeah.
would be. That's okay.
Yeah.
What else do you have, sir? Where I know where was that?
That was it.
Okay, so I've got 2 notes here, some more information on wood and lumber storage and possibly in specific zoning areas within town. And note 2, deal with insurance and or landowner for extraordinary costs. So if we can check into that, and then other than that, is there any other issues that you'd like to discuss with the developer?
If you have a summary for false alarms, I'd like to see. I don't know enough about
What falls in
like what,
category?
how often you go, where you go, what was it, like is it a certain area of town or whatever, I don't know.
yeah, we can provide for your next regular council meeting, the information that the deputy mayor has noted, and we'll also summarize, but we'll just give that to you in a separate form. And if it doesn't really change the spirit of the bylaw, then it'll be for your information, and you can deal with it at council. Like we're just, at this point, we're recommending 2 readings, and if you know, and if you want to give it all 3, as you know, it would take unanimous consent to do that. So, you know, it appears that the majority of the bylaw meets council's expectations right now, but we'll get this for information for the rest of, for the next meeting.
So, for section 16.1, it does describe, or answer your question, the map.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
I was just hearing your type of thing, my apologies.
I just have one question, it's about the building property owner. If a person owns a couple apartment blocks or something, your building, they're allowed 3 at that one block, not all of them, right?
One block.
One civic address.
One, yeah, okay. So, I mean, it's not a case of you got 5 apartments,
Right.
they're actually allowed 15 then, right? 3 in each, not 3 in total?
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion on fire services bylaw while Keaton's here?
Looks good.
Well, thanks
All
for
right, sir.
presenting, Keaton.
See in 24 years?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
So we'll let the minutes show that council is in favor of the bylaw and to recommend the 2 readings?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to Uniplex vapor barrier. Who's
Well,
dealing with that? Dean?
The intent of this is because it's the way your purchasing policy reads, it's over my spending limit, so we have to bring the invoice to council. So we're doing that. We did authorize a little bit of extra work that had to be done that wasn't recognized when they first ripped everything apart, and that's why there's kind of the change versus the budgeted amount at this point. So we're recommending that we authorize payment. They have completed the work, and that's where we sit.
Dean, if it's not in anybody's spending limit, why weren't we aware of this before the work was done? Like, who authorized it? If nobody can.
Mike made me aware of it, and I authorized it. It had to be done because it was on site, and the problem was worse than anticipated. So it was an estimate provided on the scope of work, and the magnitude of work was more than we anticipated. The roof is a walking time bomb, as you know, and we went through this in budget that we're doing our best to try and keep the cost of repair as minimal as we can moving forward, and that's the long and the short of it, without a major significant capital expenditure.
So where were these other issues that had to get completed then? Like, was that in the same area, they just didn't open up?
Yeah. Yeah, once they opened it up, I can get maybe Tony to explain a little bit more if she's got the answer. If not, we'll have to get back to you. Mike is away on vacation this week.
Where did they open up?
Right on the new section,
Where the old meets new?
yeah, in that area. But I don't have the answer as far as like what you're looking for exactly. What we're.
My understanding is that when that roof when old went on new, that it was never fastened properly, is what I'm told, and there was just a lot of issues that when they opened it up, they could see that some of the workmanship when they did it wasn't really there, and that's caused issues right from even now with the Wolf's Den area with over tightening screws, in there. There's evidence of gravity pulling water all over the place in there that we're trying to sort out even now here with the roof. The roof is, there's not a magic answer for that, and it's a problem, and we're sticking our finger in each hole that kind of comes up here.
So that was my next question, where are we at with the roof then? Like, are we, because we're supposed to be doing drywall and whatnot in there, but we're not, because we haven't put screws in yet?
No, that's in play, and I'm told that'll be done before the opening of the building. Is that correct, Tony?
The drywall will?
Yeah.
Explain it. Thorpe was supposed to be here on Tuesday of this week, and they called at Tuesday at lunchtime and said, yeah, our crew got canceled. The guy that was the project manager in Thorpe was on holidays last week, and he didn't know that until he got back to work on Tuesday. Anyways, so they've rescheduled for this Friday, the 11th, to be here, and the work will be done for the new screws and the washers. Don Kurtzinger is doing the drywall, along with our guys are gonna help him put it up, because he's a one-man show, right? So he needs a little assistance there. So he's been working on all the wall stuff, like on the sidewalls, all that stuff that needs to be done. And that is pretty much done. He's done all the taping and mudding and all that kind of stuff. The roof will likely not be done, like the drywalling, by the 18th. I've talked to the Ice Wolves. They're okay. The only thing that they need to use the Wolves Den for is some of their scouts. I think he said that they have 5 scouts coming. And so they just need a place to stand. I explained to him all the procedures, like we're gonna block this off because we have scaffolding in there and everything. He said no problem, it should be not a problem at all, it shouldn't impede at all, because they're on one side over by the concession, and if they need to use the washrooms, they still can and everything, so. And seeing as we still don't know anything on when the SJHL is actually gonna start, we've got a little bit of wiggle room there to get some of that work done, so, because it's the money in taping, like it takes a long time to do, and, yeah, so.
So the work that Thorpe has to do will be complete on Friday? It doesn't sound like very much, they're replacing a few screws.
No, it's not a big job for them, they said, so it's just a matter of, they were trying to do it when there was a crew coming through, instead of having to send a crew up. So that's why it was kept getting delayed and pushed, and they were just trying to time it with something else so it didn't cost us a whole bunch of money. Thorpe has been really good to work with so far, and Mike has been the one that has the relationship with them, and I'm just starting to work with Danny, the guy that's from Thorpe as well, so.
So, I guess I've been known to stick my finger in that hornet's nest before. Is this warranty work? Because they did fix the roof last year.
No, it's not warranty work.
Oh, so it's just further work that they missed last year then? Okay.
I can't comment on that. I know it's additional work, so.
So,
Is that a different area of the roof, or did they fix that same area last year?
we said just get the roof fixed.
He said fix the roof on fix the roof on their uniplex, so they must have missed a few screws, I guess.
Well, I think when we talked about this in budget council, we had an explanation of what we're trying to do here, and we're trying to patch it and maintain it as best we can and within the numbers that were allocated, so. That's
think
it,
that's,
Thorpe is the only one that seems to be interested in doing the work.
So one question I have,
That's bullshit.
since we're doing drywall on the inside, was there any ever thought that before we did the drywall, we would get rid of those big energy burner lights? We got those huge ballasts just humming away in there, why wouldn't we put in some better lights that are energy efficient? We gotta do the roof anyway, but we're gonna be tearing down drywall and re-putting drywall.
We're not putting drywall, like, we're not doing the entire thing, we're only doing where there's bad spots.
So if they're three quarters.
It's not actually, it's close to the concession, there's
Yeah,
about
that
it's honestly, it's about a quarter of it in total.
Yeah. I don't know, just to get rid of those big ballast burner things, would be smart for us to save money on power, and I don't think it would cost us much.
I think that's something we'd have to put forward for budget next year, so.
Yeah, we could take a look at that for 2021 budget. So the matter before you is we're recommending paying the bill here.
I don't think we have.
So what do you mean by the roof being a time bomb?
Well, there's been leaking and perpetual leaks in there. We're trying to do our best to get through it, and you had this discussion for long before we got there on the roof, and I'm not an expert on the history of the roof, but it's just, for us, it just seems to be a problem. We're trying to do the best we can with the money we got, and that's what I mean by that.
We have a lot of choice other than to pay the bill now, but
Yeah.
as it was said, it should be said again, I guess. Thorpe's were hired to fix the roof last year, and they were paid to fix the roof last year, so now they're fixing more roof this year that should have been addressed last year on the original.
That goes back to R&F, like, when it's installed, when R&F did the roof, and they did the whole thing, that was the mistake. And when it started
Sure
leaking.
enough, but we hired Thorpe's to fix it last
Yeah.
year.
But I think they did the outside tin, and then the vapor barrier was set for this
Now,
year.
it sounds like they forgot some screws when they're fixing the outside tin, if my hearing is correct. They're putting new screws in, or putting more screws in, so you kind of missed a few screws. You pay these guys a huge lump sum of money, and now.
I'm not arguing that, but I wasn't up there with them to see what they did and what they're redoing, but I agree, like, it's,
But historically, this guy wasn't here to, gotta pay this bill again, I guess. Let's hire him again, because they seem to be the most reputable guys to fix the roof. Frustrating, let me tell you, I'm a taxpayer.
All right, moving on to tax. Any purpose?
So one of the issues that we've found here in our tenure is that right now there are many properties that have been in arrears and neglected for several years, and right now there's 87 totaling $496,000 in taxes and about just under 50 grand in interest. And we have searched around, and it's a time-consuming process to collect the taxes, and our Director of Finance admin has talked to other communities as well that have got similar problems, and there seems to be one company that does this and does this well, and they're called Tax eService. And we're recommending that we retain them to collect in accordance with the Tax Enforcement Act, those properties that are in significant arrears. And I'll maybe ask Pat to explain the company and a little bit about the process and how the billing works.
They have an upfront fee, it's included in your literature. And then those fees are added to the tax roll of the people that are in arrears. So in essence, the people that are causing the problem are paying for it as well. Agreed, it takes some time to get it collected because it just doesn't happen overnight. It's a fairly in-depth process. It's probably 18 months to 2 years to get everything sorted out, from start to finish. Starting with identifying them, which I have, and then there's advertising, there's a variety of steps that are taken. With 87 properties, it's a very time-consuming process. Tax Service has been around for a number of years. They're very knowledgeable. They have extra resources that I wouldn't have because that's their specialty. So they would be able to find the folks that have left. They would have better contacts in dealing with properties where the homeowner has been deceased, that type of thing. I just think it's a really good option. It's probably about 18 hours per property for them to do it, and I'm sure it would be significantly more of my time if I were taxed with this problem. And that's why I'm recommending that we source it out at least until it's cleaned up. Then it's just a current year, and hopefully with some teeth put into it, the residents realize that you as a council are not going to stand for it, and so they know that it's going to happen to them too, and therefore it could alleviate some of the problems.
Question is, what kind of teeth are they, and to what limit of teeth are they going to use? And I'm just thinking of a collection agency, you turn stuff over, but they don't sue, they'll just pound the hell out of a person. Are these people that kind, or are they prepared to go the final distance?
They have to work within the Tax Enforcement Act, the legislated Tax Enforcement Act.
The town has a right to actually to go after the property.
Yes, yes.
Do they do
Right.
that? Do they
Yes.
go that far?
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happened, and for some reason over the years, it's been neglected, and we think this is probably the best approach in order to source it, and those that have not been paying will be paying through this process. So administratively, it just makes a lot of sense. It allows the director to focus in on the work that she has to do, and we can start proceeding this. She would shepherd the process with the company as well and be the direct liaison with them. So we're recommending that the council approve the engagement of them and to undertake this tax enforcement process and get it going now.
Are we legally allowed to charge fee for collection back to that rate we are, above and beyond what we already do for interest and all that sort of stuff there? And is there any other alternatives
Not that I'm aware of.
other than an organization like this for collecting tax? We don't have any other.
Full justice.
No.
See if you'll pay it off. It's not an option.
I mean, this is just fundamental that, again, for whatever reason, it got neglected, but I think part of the message is that people expect service and we also expect people to pay their taxes, as well, and this is a means that legally we have to do it, and that's why we're suggesting this.
And all fees and costs associated are put back to that property, not to the municipality, is that right? All of them?
That's my understanding, Pat, is that yours?
Yes, that's correct.
Is there any way we could send a letter to those 80 property owners saying, this is what we're gonna do if you don't pay up by a certain date? Not
That's
just.
kind of step one for tax service. They gave a whole presentation at the New York meeting, and Aaron uses them. I think along with like 31 out of some other number in the Northern Administrative District uses tax service to enforce it. They said it's nice because it's not a person in your own office, it's somebody from a head office somewhere else that's enforcing these things. So it takes the personal touch away from somebody in local having to deal with somebody else local.
Yeah, good point.
Excellent.
Sounds like a good organization, I guess. Any issues or problems with this?
Hold on.
So we'll move to recommend to approve this at the council meeting, I suppose. Skid steer issue. Stasha, do you have a?
This is that we, through your current purchasing policy, we're obliged to bring it for you to authorize us to proceed to commence the procurement process, and that's what we've done. It's been approved through budget, and we've got the funds in place, so now we're taking it out to the marketplace.
So what are you asking us then, just if this is what we want for a skid steer?
No, we're asking you to approve it. This is what, you've already had that discussion, and as well, I think it's been circulated with the departments to talk about what their requirements are, so we're just recommending that you approve the RFP to be released as presented.
Why would we want a wheeled skid steer?
For winter. The Taguchi does just,
Huh?
the Taguchi just spins.
Tracks on the ice.
They're on pavement lots with undercarriage, well, you know.
Be a good one of skid steer then, because the track machine will push wheels by far.
We're keeping the track, so we're gonna have both.
Yeah, for working on pavement, wheels are make more sense. For working on mostly on pavement, wheels make more sense. It's not running in ditches and muskeggs and all over the place. It's meant for on the roads and sidewalks. Then it's cheaper that way.
Do we have a minimum horsepower rating we're looking for? Are we gonna get quotes for 60 and 90 horsepower machines? Is there a minimum horsepower?
Stasha, do you want to comment on that?
So this is a request for proposal, not necessarily a request for quote, so there are, minimum, requirements to be considered in section 3B of the proposal or request. But horsepower is not one of them. It's basically based on footprint and hydraulic power.
Maybe horsepower should be added so you don't get 28 different bids to siphon through and try and decide which ones are the best.
If you get one that's underpowered, you can't run some of the equipment very well.
They do specify at the bottom here of
What you're running it
of what hydraulic pressure is needed, or flow is needed rather. I would think we should have a minimum 70 horsepower machine though. For doing what that thing is doing.
What's your 440 horsepower?
That's 450.
Yeah.
I don't even know whether it flow, I just know the hydraulics that I'm requesting the attachments. But that's why I have the horsepower rating.
It would be over 80. Your case, yeah. Over 80 for sure. All right, any points to bring up in this or
Throw her out there.
send it out?
Are you gonna put a minimum horsepower or not?
I would recommend we put a minimum of 70 horsepower, bare minimum. And that's gonna limit the amount of tenders that you receive or prices that you receive on them, so. Maybe
Yeah, we can add that to it, yeah.
70 or 80. All right, moving on, concrete work RFP. This is for the sidewalks again, is that right? Or-
Yeah, it was actually an RFQ, but it's probably just a typo.
So if this doesn't come till our council meeting on whatever 23rd of September, they're not gonna get mobilized till October. Are we smart to be pouring sidewalks in October in northern Saskatchewan?
And is there gonna be concrete available running that week into October?
Probably, but there's gonna be a heating charge added to it.
What's your thoughts, Stasha? What's your thoughts of pouring concrete in October sidewalks?
Not ideal.
So are we wasting our time with this, or do we just say, let's try to get it out in?
He
February.
stated that it would be done by October 31st, so I would hold him to that.
And no heating charge on heating and ordering that?
Everything that was in the scope of work is what, like, I didn't say that he has to, heat it, but he's warranting his work for a year, so any extra, costs are on the contractor, that's up to him to figure out.
The cost could be higher than that over here.
If there is a change in
Okay.
the RFP or the RFQ and the scope of work, he will need a, formal change order, so.
We got a locked price on the work, so that's our expectation, that they'll perform the amount of work for the amount of money. That's the way the contract is.
We seem to throw formal change orders out quite easily though, so I don't mean to insult anyone by that, but it happens a lot.
Just that,
So, sorry, I
I really think that in my experience, we should just push this until next year, move it on until next year, because the chances of having a poor quality product, whether you get warranties it or not, are much greater when in those conditions. The weather's turning fast already this year, and if he doesn't cord and heat that, and if he doesn't do it properly, the concrete is going to scale off and shale. I think could be farther ahead to put this out in the spring, and we'll probably get it in at a much lower cost than what this is agreed to.
Well, Stasha, this is one of the ones that we had sent out for a retender or a re-RFP, right?
Yes,
Or Dean? Yeah. Did we see any difference in pricing at all?
yeah, he came down $5 in price per square foot.
$5 total?
$5 per square foot.
Oh, okay.
What's council's wish here? You want to reject everything and not work, or proceed?
I would love to see it get done this year, but I agree with what Matt said.
I also agree with what Matt did. You know, if they do it and have to tear around, go and do it anyway.
and it's not like people are tripping over these holes in a sense. I mean, it's not, nobody's, it's not like installing sewer and water service. It's not essential that it gets done, I guess is the wording I'm looking for. And again, being in the concrete business for probably 18 years, the risk of, or inclement weather in October it's a known fact. So to run that risk, I would not support moving ahead in October on this. I would, it only makes sense to start pouring concrete in May, or June, not October, on a non-essential service. That's my spiel.
Is that clear, Dean?
Yeah, if that's the will of the council, then we'll want to word it on that basis, and we'll bring nothing. We'll just note that council didn't want to work for this year, and we'll bring it forward as part of the 2021 budget. So we'll do that. Yeah.
Okay, very well. Mr. Bender. You're up.
So what this is the formalization of what we discussed with council earlier, and we want formal authorization to proceed with the enforcement of property maintenance and nuisance, and as you kind of heard with Pat on the collection of arrears, this is going to be a longer term project, and all this does is authorize us to start the process, to make people aware that we are going to start inspecting properties, looking at them kind of on a one-by-one basis, and then starting the required enforcement. So it is going to take additional time versus what the bylaw the building inspector is doing, but it's something that I think council said that needs to be done, and we have a lot of areas that have been left probably too long, and now's the time to start enforcing them. So part of this is to get formal authorization from council, which we didn't have by resolution. So it authorizes us to do it, but also is to make the community aware that they need to start taking care of their properties in accordance with bylaws, and we will be enforcing them.
And so is all of this bylaw, like some of this stuff looks very familiar, like we've had some before, is there some just revised, or is this a totally revamped?
We have exactly the bylaw, and I do enforce certain things, but it's case to case right now.
Okay.
So it's like long grass and all that kind of stuff, or,
So what are we looking to approve then? Is nothing different than the bylaw that we already have? We're
The
just saying to
bylaws
enforce it?
the bylaws just for your information in your report, like the resolution is authorizing us to proceed to enforce as you directed us. That's all. So all we're doing is moving ahead, and again, part of it is to create awareness in the community that we're gonna be moving forward on this.
Okay, very well.
And this is put on our table 3 years ago, because when I signed the bylaw.
And that
I've
was
been talking about this for 3 years.
That was the intent then. I'm just not sure, Dean, why we need another motion to say enforce the bylaw that we have. I guess if that's what we need, so be it, or to create awareness.
We wanted to, well, we believe it should be a council directive, because we had the discussion in camera, and I want to take it up. The resolution provides us clear direction. It's not administration going out looking for things to do. We're being directed by council to do it, so that's why we did it this way.
Okay, perfect.
Just out of curiosity, when a property has been, and the wrong word, picked on, when you finally decide to go after somebody, is council going to be aware of that and the property's address in case there's flack? Because I'm sure there will be. I totally agree with this, by the way, but I'm just wondering.
Would that not be in the building bylaw?
No, would be. Yeah, that's my asking. Would it be in the report? He's saying no.
No, probably not. It's none of our business.
Yeah.
It should be everybody who's looking
we're-
after their property.
I mean, your bylaw is clear on what the standards are, and we're going to enforce the standards. So, in a lot of these cases, there's not a lot of subjectivity. It's pretty obvious. Like part of what our bylaw officer do, we'll take pictures of property, so we need to make sure we have evidence to support the enforcement. So, we're going to do it right, and do it once and do it right. Go after those that need to be dealt with.
Very well. Any other discussion?
All right.
Brought helmet in? Brought helmet in for Robbie as he starts going around the neighborhood.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of progress already, keeping an eye on, talked to many people.
I know, but you gotta start dropping the hammer on these guys.
So I think that's, we had, as I mentioned earlier, like the next thing is council member roundtable. So moving forward, if you do have something that you do want to discuss, put it on the table, and we can get the information for it, and then have a discussion with staff present, and kind of go from there. So is there anything, I guess, at this point that, even though we don't have any information, that you want us to look into on your behalf?
Town shop completion. Do you know? No, nobody?
I don't know much.
I believe that we're just going to be issuing part of the payment. It's more than substantially completed. There's only a little bit left on the holdback, so it's 98% done, I think.
Who are we waiting on? Or what's not done?
There's some odds and ends with some little stuff. I don't have the list in front of me.
Yeah, there's like
It's
a
pretty minute
small-
stuff, and Mike is working on that file.
Small non-compliance list.
Good job getting an excavator on Larange Avenue and getting that basement dug out there, Robbie. That's been a long time coming.
It's really hard working with,
Sweet.
Good, just take credit, pal.
well, that's a little feat that I'm like, yes, finally.
Yeah.
They knew about it, but it took some time.
That's good.
Is there anything else? Because otherwise I'll just ask the staff to leave, and then we can go in cameras. We got a lot of good camera stuff to deal with tonight.
One thing that I do want to do is,
Yeah.
we'll be kind of checking in Robbie's department is seeing as there is a provincial and municipal election. I do know that under our current bylaws, it only allows for one election sign. Is there any way of having a non-enforcement due to the tight timeline between provincial and municipal elections that people are allowed to have 2 signs when they're on?
I don't think it regulates the number of signs. Election signs don't require permits, they don't require one.
Unless they're over a certain size, right?
Yeah, anything over a certain sizes, yeah. I'd have to review the exact bylaw, but I don't recall only one sign being permitted.
What we'll do is send, just for your council's information, we'll actually send that information out, and I know Allison's a returning officer, and we're getting information prepared for candidates, so the signage thing, we can maybe add that to the information package, that's a good idea, like what the regulations are. Yeah, good idea. Allison, can you just make a note of that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, council will just ask that the staff can have the rest of the night off. And Larry can stick around, but everybody else can go.
Sasha has something.
I just wanted clarification on what the minimum, for that skid steer RFP, what the minimum, like, horsepower.
It's a minimum 70. Bare minimum.
Yeah.
Because what's really important, like, to the staff and the operators is that, like, the footprint, like, it fits on our sidewalk, so I don't know if, like, something in that horsepower, like, we're really stringent on it fitting on the sidewalk, so
Well,
that's kind of why we didn't put it in there.
I'll wait into this conversation. Go ahead. Go ahead. I gotta bring it up here.
No, I'm just saying, if you're gonna get all these different attachments for it, like a snow blower and all that, better have somebody that knows what hydraulic power you need.
Yeah, they've got that listed in
It's
here.
listed in the RFP what we have, like, we have brooms, we have attachments, it's just we don't have a skid steer that can operate it, and they all have the minimum, hydraulic flow that they need, so it's listed in the request.
So what's interesting in your request here, within the footprint of the design of your particular skid steer, you want a machine with lifting capacity to lift and load the sand truck, but small enough to operate within the sidewalk footprint, so.
Yeah.
That's gonna be an interesting one to fulfill, but we'll see what they come back with.
Yeah, there's a few out there, with those specifications, but that's really what's important for, like, our operations with Parks and Rec as well, and the airport, so.
So what kind of bucket would you be using to lift or load the sand truck? Like
Just usually a small
construction
bucket.
bucket?
No, just our small bucket, like, in case the loaders are being used to haul snow. It's just an extra piece of
So that'd
equipment.
be just in an emergency case, we're not gonna.
Yeah, like, we're not loading the sander with a skid steer all the time, we're most often using a loader, but, that's why the
Would your other
horsepower.
skid steer load that?
It's not, no, it
Reach
doesn't
high
have
enough?
a long enough reach, so.
This may be a stupid question, but the machine that you buy, in terms of repairs and everything, are we kind of dealing with, say, Prince Albert and Saskatoon, or, you know, like what happens if if the cheapest one is somebody from Regina, and then we pay for a lot of repairs and travel?
In the RFP, it states what our preferences are, so it is on price and warranty location. Like, there's I think a list of 5 different kind of things that we're looking at. Obviously, ultimately price, but then if they're priced very similarly, there's, 4 more parameters that we're telling the vendors that we're looking at. So, I think the very last one is kind of mechanical, like, access or whatever. Yeah, they do have to include where warranty would take place, or if they travel up, basically.
So loading your sanding truck, just thinking outside the box here, why wouldn't you just use the backhoe? You got definitely lifting capacity and it's got the reach on it, right?
Yeah, it's just, the bucket is like quite small, so it's a lot.
It's gonna be smaller on the skid steer.
It's a lot easier to train people to run a skid steer than the backhoe as well. So I've got maybe 2 operators who are competent on the backhoe, whereas almost everyone's competent on the
My
skid
boy can
steer.
run the skid steer.
Yeah.
You can probably run it.
If you showed it.
All right, if there's nothing else, we will ask the employees to leave and carry on with the other stuff.
Thanks, Sheila, thank you, dispatch.